On May 1st, 2011, McClatchy Tribune Business News wrote an article quoting Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, saying, "There is no substitute for a homeland of our own. The modern nation of Israel is a key factor in the Middle East crisis that fills our news daily, and I think it is very important for us to learn more about the country so that we may have a better understanding of what is happening in our world." The modern state of Israel has its own unique origin, government, and culture. I have done research into the nation and would like to share with you a few facts that I have learned. First, we will look at how Israel became a nation again. Second, we will examine their governmental structure. And lastly, we will consider their culture. First, let's take a look at how Israel became a nation. The Land of Blood and Honey, the Rise of Modern Israel, a book that was published in 2010 by St. Martin Press, provides us the following information. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people were scattered around the world with no place to call their own. But in the 20th century, many began to return to the land of Israel, which is located in modern Palestine. In the 1940s, there was already a substantial population of Jews and Arabs living within Jerusalem, and much like today, tension between the two was very high. In an attempt to ease tension and violence in Palestine, the UN General Assembly voted in 1947 for the partition of Palestine and the establishment of the Jewish state. Here is a map that shows the proposed partition of Israel. As you can see, of Palestine, as you can see, Jerusalem was not to be part of Israel, of the Jewish state, but to be an international zone governed by the UN. The establishment of the state was easier said than done. The Arabs refused the proposal, and an Israeli war of independence broke out. The war, it was a bloody war, and that finally came to its climax in April of 1948, when the Jews won and the nation of Israel was proclaimed. The Jews managed to conquer more land through the war than which was initially proposed by the UN. Now that we have some understanding of how Israel became a nation, let's examine their governmental structure. Culture and Customs of Israel, a book that was written, published by Greenwood Press in 2004, provides us the following information. Israel has three political institutes: the Knesset, the office of the president, and the office of the prime minister and his cabinet. The Knesset, which means assembly, is made up of 120 members. The members are elected every 4 years by Israeli citizens. Any citizen over the age of 18 can vote regardless of their religion, race, or gender. Unlike here in the US, voters in Israel don't vote for specific candidates, but they vote for political parties. There are many different political parties in Israel, but the most dominant are the Labor and the Likud party. The Labor are fairly center-left in their policies and can be seen more like our Democrats. The Likud are more center-right and can be more seen as our Republicans. The Europa Yearbook, published in 2009, provides us this information. The Knesset elects the president, and the president is only allowed to serve a single 7-year term. The Europa Yearbook also says that executive power in Israel lies not with the president, but with the cabinet. The prime minister is the leader of the cabinet, and he chooses the various ministers that make up the cabinet. Usually they are made up of Knesset members, but non-members can be appointed. Now that we have examined their governmental structure, let's take a more personal look. What is life like in Israel? Let's consider their culture. Culture and Customs of Israel elaborates upon the culture in Israel. First, time is measured very differently in Israel than here in the United States. Here, a new day begins at midnight. In Israel, a new day begins at sundown, and it ends the next sundown. Also, our work week begins on Monday and runs through Friday. In Israel, the work week begins on Sunday, and it ends in the middle of Friday. From Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is the Sabbath, a religious holy day and a day of rest. Public transportation and many businesses closed down on this day. Social relations in Israel are a bit less casual than here in the United States. For example, in the military, soldiers don't address their commanding officers formally. And school students also show the same kind of casualness with their teachers. Food also plays an important role in Israel. For example, if you visit Israel, you probably won't go hungry. When a guest arrives to a house, they are served something to eat and drink immediately upon arrival. But don't be a picky eater, because refusing to eat with someone in Israel is seen pretty much as refusing that person's friendship. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of the nation of Israel. First, we looked at how Israel became a nation. Second, we examined their governmental structure. And lastly, we considered some of its culture. The Israeli people love their nation, and like Shimon Peres said, there is no substitute for a nation of a homeland of our own. I'm sure many of us here can relate to his words and feel the same way about our own country.